Welcome back to the fourth of our 10-part series called Retrospective. If you haven't listened to the previous episodes, I highly recommend going back because it will flesh out a little bit of the whole story behind this. In this episode, we talk about career paths, how some people have very straight lines, while other people, such as myself, have very curvy lines with lots of different divergent paths. In this episode, you'll hear conversations with my fellow graduates, in this order: Sonja Heinrichsen, Brett Gottschall, Mira Hecht, Erez Golan, Peter Wu, Yoram Wahlberger, Ricardo Rivera, and Lizea Lyons.
A lot of the artists that I know here who have remained here from our class, or just artists that I know in general, have some kind of support system. Like they either are married to somebody who helps pay the bills, or they have family support through parents or something like that. I have none of that, none at all. So I'm really on my own with everything. It's like, and that, even just the daily, like the stuff that comes on top of everything, like, I don't know, shopping, cooking, food, all of these things. Like at the moment, I'm so busy because we have these ceramic sales coming up now, which is because of, the holiday season, that I'm like, when do I prepare food? And, when do I do my laundry, which is actually running right now because now I'm at home because I'm doing this interview with you. So I have definitely felt very, very strained, and also drained a lot, where I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I don't know how to do all of this. And now that I'm teaching at this museum art ceramic studio in the city meaning San Francisco, because if you live in the East Bay, you call San Francisco the city. I don't know why, but but that has actually taken a lot of my time, because I'm not just teaching, I'm running the whole studio, which in ceramics is a lot, because you have to reclaim all the clay. It has to be reconstituted. You have to fire kilns. You have to clean up a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work in ceramics. It's a little different than some other media. There's a lot of behind the scene operation that needs to be done.
I know. I ran a community darkroom for 10 years, and like the amount of behind the scenes just to keep it running was even that. I mean, and ceramics is more. I know you had to do far more than I would have to do in a photo studio, but still, I understand personally.
Yeah.
I empathize with you.
Yeah. So, it's taken a whole chunk out of my week. So, and I'm also doing all this other stuff with all preparing on the 20th. I'm firing a high fire kiln. I often fire my own kilns, and then you have to have a full kiln. You have to have enough time to produce the work, to glaze the work, and get it all ready. And and since this is a community studio, I can't shift it by a day or 2 days, or not at all. It needs to be fired that day. It's sometimes quite stressful, actually, and sometimes like, wow, I'm questioning this a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely a challenging life. But would I want to do something different? I mean, would I have wanted my life to be different? Probably not. I mean, probably not in the sense of career, that I would have chosen a different career instead of being an artist. No, I don't think so. I think I did make the right decision. I wanted to be an artist, and it was really not so much of maybe it wasn't even just a choice. It was just what happened. It was like, I was always a creative person, even as a child. And I think this just had to happen. I would have been very unhappy in let's say, an office environment. I mean, I have, as a student, especially when I was a student in Germany, I had all kinds of jobs in the summer and, side jobs while being a student. And some of them were office jobs, and I hated it. I was counting the hours every day and counting the days until that job was over, because usually it was like, if it was a summer job, it was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. I just really, really didn't like that at all. I mean, it's still actually something I don't like, even in my own work. And that's a big deficit. I'm really, really bad at, advertising myself, putting together my website. Instagram it seems to never fit into my time schedule or day. I didn't like all of that stuff from the beginning, right? So that is, it's a big, doing my taxes. I still haven't done my taxes for 2020. And, things like that. I really am really horrible at those kinds of things. So I would just not make a good administrative person of any sort.
I'm with you. My wife is an accountant, so that is helpful for me.
Yeah, that's helpful for you. But, as I said, like I have to do my own everything.
During grad school, I was working at Pasquale Ianetti, Master Print Gallery. Hi, Pasquale. Are you out there? I think he's still kicking. He's still going. But like after I graduated, I went straight into his office, and it's like, hey, do you want me to stay for? I plan to stay in San Fran for a little while longer, but I need to get paid, man. So I said, here's my number. This is what I want, and this is what I'll do. And he's a tight. He kept his wallet real close to his person. He liked lots of great things, but he didn't want to pay for it. But anyway, so I put that out there, and voila, without even thinking, he's like, yes, it's fine. I'll pay it. So, it was, the system was working for me already. And I remember talking to our finance guy there, and he couldn't believe it. He's like, I've worked for Pasquale for 20 years now, and that's he's never paid anybody that much money. I was like, okay. So it worked. I asked for what I wanted, and I got it. I got lucky, I guess. Then I stayed for 2-3 years after graduation, and that's what I did, which was putting the shows together. I got to do some curating. I was also the guy hanging the shows and doing some framing and learning how to frame. So I got a lot of good stuff out of that. And then when I moved away and sold that Mustang, gosh, I wish I'd never sold that dang Mustang. 66. If you're out there, Mustang, I miss you. So, but maybe I'll get it again. Came back this way, kind of with a clean slate, and I was like, well, I'm going to try to maybe get a teaching job. So started applying for those things, and in the meantime, looked for interesting art-related opportunities, which turned into that, a couple of yahoos wanting to start a gallery and didn't know anything about it, like they just wanted to make money or something. But
I think that's a rite of passage that all artists go through, is like thinking they can run a gallery at some point.
Yeah. So yeah, I tried that, which was it was crazy. I'm glad I did it. It was just with the wrong people. But we put some shows together. I think I got 6 months out of that, 6 shows out of that, and got to show some of your work and all of my favorite people's work, right? Sure,
what?
Maybe not.
I don't recall this.
Okay.
It's possible. My memory's not that great, so it's possible. What was the gallery called?
I may be mistaken too. It's been a long time. Gallery 44 was the gallery. It was on 44th and Main. You didn't have a show there. You didn't have a show there.
No, I don't think I did.
Justin and John sent me some work. Dick sent me some work too. Who else? Lily sent me some work too. So it was kind of like this. It was like a little bit of San Francisco out there, and then I had locals that I was just learning the community here, because I just moved here. I didn't know anybody. When you start a gallery or a new gallery starts up, everybody comes. The whole town is there, so there was support there. We were kind of in a weird a part of town where there were no other galleries. The big box stores, and somehow this little gallery's stuck in between. And there was like a hair salon next door, that kind of a deal. Anyway.
Well, it's either that or it's in a rundown neighborhood where nobody that would go to a gallery would want to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, that lasted 6 months. Yeah. The guys, it was messed up. The guy that was paying the lease on the space, really interesting but strange dude. And his son had lots of problems that became my problems. I had to say, hey, we can't do this anymore. It's those dogs. We had a frame shop attached too, so I was doing the framing, putting the shows together. But during this time, supposed to be a partner in all this is addicted to heroin and is coming in after hours and stealing all the equipment, generators, and hawking it so he can go get some more smack. That was the downfall of that place. It's like, oh, can't do this anymore.
I'm going to defend the heroin addicts in the world. I was a heroin addict. I never broke in anywhere and hawked anybody's stuff. It's just like I was a very responsible heroin addict.
Yeah, there you go. There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
So don't steal stuff, especially from yourself.
It is he was probably stealing, he thought, from his father.
Yes, he was. He's got problems with his father. So yeah, that there was that. I wasn't getting paid much of anything for that. Just a lot of hard work and doing something that I like to do. And then during that time, I got a job at the community college, printmaking, teaching introductory printmaking. Yeah, it was just the one course, and I did that for a year. And I also ran the gallery at the community college. So that was kind of a dual thing. And then also at that same time would go over and work a weekend or work a couple of days at the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art, just to stay in the mix and meet the people and see the artwork. And then I just got lucky with the Nelson Atkins Museum expanding their building and then moving all the artwork from one area into another area. Because I was working at the Kemper, which is right next door to the Nelson for the most part, they called over asking if anybody was available to help in the move of the storage. And so I was like, oh, yes, please. So that's how the Nelson Atkins thing came up. And, I worked part-time for 6 months and then did my good work. And they hired me on full-time after that. So that was kind of the path.
So I taught at the Corcoran for 11 years, and then the pandemic happened. I was teaching continuing education, is what they call it there. I applied to teach just, regular classes, and I got a call like the day after I applied to teach there saying somebody decided not to teach continuing ed. Could I help them? Which I said yes, of course, and I started teaching actually adults and young people who were enrolled in the bachelor program, because the Corcoran had a continuing education program, which is very unusual in that people could accrue credit for these classes, which are the classes that I took there before I went to SFAI. You have to pay double, but still you could get credit, which was great because American took those credits when I went back to AU. They honored those credits, so that was great. But when GW took it over, that accreditation stopped. So GW took over the Corcoran maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, if you teach, you don't make a lot of money teaching, especially in a university. I was an adjunct teacher, so I was doing it just because I love it. I love teaching, and I realized I love teaching adults probably because I went back to school as an adult, and I felt like I was really giving back. And I feel that my adult students, who many of them now are in galleries, they're showing their work. I've been teaching them for like 11 years, the same people. It gives me so much pleasure. I mean, it's just a lot of lawyers who wanted to change what they were doing. I mean, it's just a blessing to work with them. And so after the Corcoran stopped during the pandemic, these continuing ed classes, I decided, because my students were saying, please teach, that I would have to teach on Zoom because no one was seeing each other. So Zoom was the only option. And it works so well for me. I'm making more money teaching on my own than I was at the university, but certainly not enough money that would sustain my life or anything like that. And I'm not living on the money that I make through selling my paintings, although I have 2 galleries and they do sell my work. It was really slow during the pandemic. Not much was happening. I mean, I would apply to online shows and things like that, but not a lot was selling. I was giving away some paintings to help other artists who were really hurting during that time, and so charity things during the pandemic. But no, I don't. I don't know how I would sustain myself if I had to live just on selling my work. I'd probably have to have a few more galleries. Yeah, but I do sell my work through the galleries. Yeah, of course.
So the short version is we graduated. I stayed on for, I think it was 5 more years, running the community education at SFAI. I ended up being director of community programs, mainly focusing on the young artist program, the kids program. There was the young artist program, the pre-college program, the adult continuing education program, and I did that for 5 extra years. And then we moved back to Israel, and we've been here since. So, roughly 15 some years in Israel since.
Now you say were you married in school?
Well, we moved to San Francisco. Sharon and I moved to San Francisco together. She was getting her BFA from the new genres department, and I was doing my MFA in photography. And as soon as we both graduated at the same time. We got married in Las Vegas. We did an Elvis wedding in Las Vegas. I don't know if you remember, there was another Israeli artist with us, Sharon Glasberg. She was also from New Genres. But regardless, I mean, she was the one who actually filmed. We made like a video movie from the Vegas wedding. It was nice because we shot in the Paris hotel and the Venetian hotel. Then we did the Vegas wedding. So it was like we're traveling all over the world,
Nice.
It was nice. And then we had the actual wedding back here in Israel. Then we had a big honeymoon, went to Vietnam, went to Laos, went to Hong Kong, Berlin, and then moved back to San Francisco. Sharon actually, as soon as she graduated, she didn't stay in the art world. She started her doctorate degree in clinical psychology. And that was extra 5 years. So 5 years later, when she graduated, we moved back to Israel. I think as soon as we graduated, I had, one of those introduction shows at one of the galleries in San Francisco, Paula Englund. But that was pretty much my one and only show that I did in San Francisco because I got too busy with work at the San Francisco Art Institute and pretty much dedicated everything that I knew and wanted to dedicated it to the students, mostly to the young students, which was terrific. I mean, it was really fulfilling, and it was something I really enjoyed doing. I was actually doing that before I moved to San Francisco. I had my own photography schools. So I wasn't doing much of my own artwork at the time. I was still photographing. I did a couple shows in Israel. One of them was while we were living in San Francisco, and the other one was a show that I did as soon as we got back. I think it was 2003 probably 2007 or so. We moved back to Israel in 2006. So 2007, I did a show in Israel, and that was actually my last show. I did participate in group shows, but not a solo show. I ended up running, I was the head of photography department, running an academic program here in Israel, one of the top 3 art colleges here in Israel. I ended up being the head of photography department for 5 years, and then stopped doing that in 2012, late 2012, at the end of the academic year. Honestly, I got fed up with students.
I can relate. I'm still teaching.
A bunch of whiners.
Yeah, and it's only getting worse, sadly.
Yeah. And I think, at the time, I think we had about 120 students at the time when I was there running the department. And soon after, I think, overall, the situation maybe worldwide or in Israel, I'm not really sure, but enrollment started really going down and down and down and down. And to a point where, I'm still in touch with them, and I talk to some of the staff and faculty that I had back then. They're about, at 40 students now, and I'm talking about a 4-year academic program, total of 40 students. So it's pretty sad, actually.
It is, yeah. Well, my undergraduate degree, when I graduated from the Corcoran, I graduated with only a total of 4 of us, so 3 other students and me.
Really? Wow.
It was a fluke year. The year before us was like 15, the year after us was 30, but like our year, for some stupid reason, was just 4 of us.
Wow.
Which was great in many ways, but horrible in so many other ways.
Yeah. Not much of a group dynamic.
No, and we didn't like each other, so it's just,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as soon as I got back to Israel, I decided that I want to get an MFA, like not an MFA degree, sorry, an MBA degree, and I did the terrific program at the Tel Aviv University. It's called the Executive MBA program, and I did mine specializing actually in nonprofit organizations.
Very cool.
Thinking that, my career idea at the time was, maybe I'll end up being kind of a head of an art college or a COO of one, or go into maybe museum or, something along that line. And I really started at the same time, I started riding mountain bikes, pretty intensely. And as soon as
I'm waiting to see how this comes together. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And as soon as I finished my degree, basically as the head of an academic program, we had 4 working days. One was a studio day, and then that makes 5, and then you've got 2 weekend days. And I actually used my studio day to open up a bike shop, and with a couple friends, and we ended up opening a really nice professional bike shop. That was about 13 years ago. Since then, I bought my friends out. They were my partners. Yeah, so since then, I bought them out.
I was just doing the math. That's all my facial expression was.
Okay. And now I actually have 2 really nice professional bike shops, and I ride bikes most of the time. and so much for art.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm a little saddened by that. I quite enjoyed your art, but okay. If it makes you happy.
Well, I think that, I enjoyed making art. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed making art, and I think the intensity of it at the time was good. I was totally immersed in it when I was in Israel prior to coming to San Francisco. I had my own 2 art schools. I was running one art school. I was a partner in another photography school. My whole life was about art. And I think coming back to Israel, it's a very different art scene. And I guess the intensity, or I would say the emotional investment, along with the, money investment that you have to make to survive as a working artist while having a family, because we came back from San Francisco with our firstborn. She was born in San Francisco. At the time, she was 3 when we came back here. She's 18 now, and it was just it was almost impossible. I mean, I was lucky to get the position as the head of a photography department and to do that for 5 years, and that still connected me to the art world. I was curating shows. I was showing my work as part of group shows, but it wasn't really, my main interest anymore. It was more about uh, helping younger students find their way within the art world. And some of them did terrific. They're still doing great. But I think for me, it was always the balance between, do I want a family? Do I want, if you want a real family, is, any family is real, but you want a family with, 3 kids and in a house, and you want kind of a daily normal routine. It doesn't really coexist with being an active artist, at least here in Israel, for the most case. Some people do make it, but you have to be really totally immersed in it, emotionally invested, and I think for me, I wasn't up to it. I think it was just the emotional investment of putting together a show every couple of years and basically financing that show until, I did have a gallery here in Israel. I had one before I moved to San Francisco that was representing me, and they were terrific. She was unbelievable, super relaxed, never pressured me into anything. But at the same time, it was just, you have to invest all that money into putting the show together, cross your finger for, good reviews, or any review for that matter. The worst thing is to be ignored. You had a show, no one knows about it. Great. And then it wasn't the case in it wasn't the case in my experience. I did have reviews. Most of them were good, but just the whole idea of putting yourself up there again and kind of going through that routine, it was just too much for me. Just the anxiety of it was just too overwhelming for me at the end. And so I decided, it was easy for me to focus on my students and put that aside. And when you put that aside for too long, it's very hard to come back to it. And at the same time, the biking passion was growing and growing and growing, and that was just just being outdoor. Because when you probably remember most of my work as being kind of outdoorsy, whether it was the black and white sailboats from the Golden Gate Bridge, or
I loved those pieces.
or thank you, or just the scenery, the big 4x5 shots that I did and kind of slightly manipulated from the California Nevada landscapes. So for me, it was always about being outdoors, and I guess biking kind of got me there and made me just as happy, because I've always enjoyed the part that was being outdoor and photographing outdoor as the actual experience. Perhaps more than, printing it and putting it on the wall, which to me was like, oh, that was a great moment when I was there. And just biking outdoors, and we've got terrific desert rides here in Israel, and we've got like forest rides here in Israel. It's just a beautiful place. It's got everything from snowy mountains to year-round sunny beaches in Eilat. You've got everything here.
Are you selling other company bikes, or like you designing your own bikes?
No, we're not designing our own bikes.
Okay.
There's not a single company here in Israel that actually does that. I work with 12 big companies here in Israel. So we've got, if you're a little bit into the bike world, so we've got Specialized, we've got Santa Cruz, but mostly, actually, funny enough, mostly North American companies. And we've got 2 shops now, and everything is going really great. The COVID epidemic actually made the biking industry kind of boom. So we've really enjoyed that for the last 2 years. And I have to say, haven't really enjoyed COVID-19, but if I'm being not cynical but realistic, just about the business aspect of things, it's been amazing 2 years for us.
Yeah, I've thought about buying a bike since COVID hit.
Yeah, so really the last 2 years have been unbelievable, and it's still going. I mean, it's still going.
Yeah, so right after grad school, I started working with Patrick Painter Gallery, and he's picked me up as an artist in 2005, and I showed there till 2009, and then things got complicated there, so I left the gallery, and then I just started working with other artists and other curators, and then I started showing with Green Exhibitions, who was run by Rob Green in God, I don't remember when, 2010 maybe? I don't know, 9? I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
That's about the time we last saw each other, when I was in Los Angeles for that conference.
Which conference?
I remember I was in Los Angeles for, I think it was a CAA conference or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that.
Yeah.
And I remember it was you and I, like, we just met up, and then we ran into Tony Labat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a long time ago. It's hard to keep these things together now. It's all conflated.
We're getting old. We're getting old, I know.
Yeah, right now you don't even know how old you are anymore. If someone asks me how old I am, I'm like, fuck, I have to actually think about it because I don't even keep track anymore.
I know, because I mentioned it on the podcast a lot.
But after school, I mean, and after working with Patrick and showing with Patrick, that was an interesting experience because right out of grad school, I was really romantic about trying to pursue art, and I'm just gonna pull part-time job and try to make my work. And then you realize you step out of that world and you're like, well, that's not gonna fucking happen. I gotta get a real fucking job, or I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna have to go back home to Canada. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I started and I was a preparator at the Walter McBean Gallery and at SFAI, so I had that kind of experience. And then started working with Patrick, doing that kind of stuff and learning all the techniques, and him sending me to art fairs and stuff like that, which was a really enriching experience. But also, I learned a lot of the dirty things of the art world, which really, really quickly, and also a lot of the good things. And I kind of just now, and I didn't actually make work for a year after I left grad school, because all the stuff I learned about the art world is very discouraging. But then you figure out how to navigate it, and it's like, well, if I know how to do it now, and I know what what they're expecting and all these things, then maybe I can navigate it my own way and do it as best as I can and take out the dirty stuff, or acknowledge the dirty stuff, and then try to just go about it, forge my own way through it. So, and then after that, I started teaching. I went with this program that was that sends artists out into the community, and we teach system impacted youth. And I did that for quite a long time, and that was very, very fulfilling. And then making my work also, and then showing in galleries, Rob at Green Exhibitions, and also getting grants and producing major works and stuff like that. And then when the pandemic hit, obviously all of us artists lost our opportunities. So I thought to create a virtual gallery called Epoch, and then that blew up a little bit. So I am now mainly focused on that, and then doing my work on the side as well, and having a lot of commissions coming up, and really venturing into the NFT world, essentially. Yeah.
The one thing that didn't change, which I'm happy and I'm proud of, is I'm still in San Francisco. I never actually left, except from a break, maybe for 4 years. I was going back and forth between Israel and San Francisco because I met my wife now over there and was commuting. So basically every time I had a project or an art show or something here in San Francisco, I would come here. But that was only 4 years out of almost the 30 that I've been here. So I consider that I really never left. Actually, now I am thinking about moving out of the city. Now that you ask, I feel like maybe it's time to move my studio up to the foothills of the Sierras which is about 2 hours and a half drive from here. Just one of the reasons, because rent was just crazy here. Also, just wanted to get out and do art over there, and it happened before the pandemic. So once the pandemic hit, we actually moved there for a year and lived there because we could. My daughter's school was online and my job was remote, so my wife's job. And now we're back, but we're going back and forth as I can. So that's one thing. I never left physically, or always lived here and worked here. After school, go doing my master's was a kind of point in my life where point in time in my life when I made a change. I thought back then, until then, my main income and I wouldn't say my focus, but my main income and 80% of my focus was in design. I was a designer. I had I studied design in the school in Israel. I got my BA in design, and I moved to the States to work here as a designer, and that's the first job I got. But something happened. I always say that actually, I think I don't know if I became an artist or wanted to do fine art was when I moved here. And looking backward, it has to do with maybe the fact that I got out of my swamp of 30 years living in Israel, which it is a swamp. It is a little city, little country in a little city. It's like a big village. Everyone knows what you're doing. Everyone has a thing to say about what you're doing. And maybe that getting out of that comfort zone and that environment that I knew and moving to a completely new place, which was San Francisco. I came here directly almost. Allows me to look at things differently, look at myself, and allow me maybe to do something that I always wanted to do and couldn't. So after my master, after going to school, the Art Institute, I saw myself mainly as an artist. So I did mainly art, still did some project or gigs as a designer just to support myself. But since I was lucky to have shows and galleries right after school and start selling, I thought I could make also living from just being an artist. That dream kind of backfired in my face once I got married and suddenly had a family, our own daughter, and my wife had her daughter. So suddenly I was father of three, and from being single in San Francisco to have a family in San Francisco once they moved here. It happened the same time when I got a really big commission of art. So I thought, oh, great, I can support my family by doing art. And they just arrived. So I was, doing crazy times and working late and driving an hour every day to the fabricator and trying to, basically I lost my pants on that project. I lost so much money because of time management and didn't realize how behind I was. And after that project, I decided, okay, now I need to maybe split my time again and go back to get a job as a designer, which is kind of a full-time job really, and do art in the evenings and in my studio and on weekends. And that's what I've been doing since then. I think my day job is today is a creative director. Back then was a designer. Today I oversee design, but back then I was designing also. And then I have my studio time. I had a studio in South San Francisco for many years, so I would go in the evenings, or my Saturday was my day to be there. And when I had project, it would be more than that, of course, or a commission. But yeah, so from graduating until today, I've been like 100% doing art or 50% back and forth. And hopefully soon it can go back to 100% once my daughter goes to college, and maybe we'll move to a studio in the mountains. But still, gotta pay for college and gotta pay for bills.
I do know that's
Yeah,
yeah.
like most of us, except from the lucky few maybe who done. But I still consider myself lucky. I know it's rare to have shows right, right even before we graduated, I knew I had a show ready. So I do feel lucky in that sense. And then finding this amazing gallery that I work with right now for the last 15 years, who's a very honest and very supportive guy who is also pretty well known in the industry, in the art world, if you want. So that also is very lucky. I mean, some people have great gallery, but also being an honest and supportive, financially and mentally, if you want. I was lucky in that sense, I think. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
I actually looked up paper culture and like looked at it, and it didn't have anything about like team members. Like I couldn't find what you did there.
Okay, yeah, I'm the creative director. It's a cool company. It's really good. At least they do good, very eco-friendly, and they care about carbon footprint. So finally, I feel like I'm working for someone who does. And the team is great. People are great. My team is great. I feel like I'm a teacher all over again. All the young kids coming out of college, the age of my daughter. I enjoy that.
A professor from City College, uninvited, came to our graduation ceremony. And I saw her as we were kind of, afterwards, and she came up to me and she said, "Congratulations." And then the next words out of her mouth, "Come and teach with us." And I was terrified. So I was like,
It's incredibly flattering. What are you talking about?
So I was like, I hate school. What the hell would I want to teach? I'm trying to get out of here. So that triggered it, and I adjuncted at Sacramento City College, and then I had lecture positions at California College of the Arts. I taught one semester at Stanford, and then I taught at UC Davis and many other schools. But I really thought, oh, I think I want to teach, but it was terrifying. It's not terrifying anymore. So I think the question was how I got into education. Was that the question? I forgot.
Question was sort of what has your career path looked like over the last 20 years?
Yeah, teaching. So I was joking with a colleague that I should get an honorary doctorate in education because really I've been learning how to teach at the community college because at art school we didn't learn how to teach, and so all these MFAs then go to their respective teaching institutions and like, okay. So we follow the roles of our role models. So like our mutual professor, Paul Koss. I remember all of my professors, Anna Nabokov, Dewey Crumpler, Jeremy Morgan, and I take the bits and parts that really stood out to me. And how can I relate that at a level for students who have never been exposed to art? And how do I, in a sense, I feel like I'm creating ambassadors to the arts because they're not going to go to the arts. I want them to appreciate it and understand that culture is important. And then I decided that I wanted to get out of the Bay Area. So I quit my job and I went to Switzerland on a residency, and everything just changed. I collaborated with a great percussionist, Christophe Fillet, in the Canton of Ballet in Switzerland. And I also met George Funder, the president of ECAB, which is an art school. And the exposure to this really just blew my mind. And they invited me back quite a few times. And then I came back and landed a job in Rhode Island, at a community college in Rhode Island. I was on the East Coast for 5 years. And then I decided I wanted to be closer to my family and I wanted to be back in California. So I applied here and I got this job.
Well, I mean, I had help from my ex-husband for my daughter. So that was.
If I remember correctly, that person is somebody from Green Day. Is that right? That's what I remember.
You remembered.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said to my daughter this morning, I was like, I don't even know if he remembers. She's like, he probably remembers.
Because it was like, so like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? Yeah.
No, it's funny because like looking at the wedding pictures, because we both walked her down the aisle, and it's like, it's so crazy. I mean, I've known him since he was 20. I was 20. We were 20 and 21 when we met. So a lot of history.
I don't remember which person from Green Day it was. I just remember Green Day for some weird reason.
Yeah. Well, because I was a big deal in the Bay Area too. So.
Right. Yeah. Which sort of associates it all together for why you were there and why you wanted to stay there and all that. I get all that. But yeah, it was okay. So you didn't teach, you didn't do any other things. So you just made art and full-time mom for the past 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, until she went to college, I definitely had financial support for her from him. So, which ended at 18. Which was fine. I mean, I felt like, okay, if I had the resources financially and I had the time to be there for her, then that's what I should do. So, and I did it. But I mean, I did sell work, but it's not enough to live in New York City, obviously. I remember one Larry Sultan coming to New York for something, and we were all out and we were drinking these god awful apple martinis. And he was like, how do you pay your mortgage? And I was so hurt, I thought like, well, you should be proud of me. I'm living in New York and I'm raising my daughter and I have this gallery in San Francisco. Why do you care how I pay my mortgage? Like,
well, I mean, it's one of those things like there's the old joke that like if you get 10 bankers together, all they're going to do is talk about art, and you get 10 artists together, all they're going to talk about is money.
Right. No, I know. It's definitely, time and money affect people's ability to make art. So.
And it's one of the things that a lot of us are very sort of envious of. Like, I'm very envious of people who have enough time, money, and space. Those are my big three: time, money, and space. If I had that amount of money, I would be so happy. Like, I don't need to be rich, but I want enough money to have time, money, and space to just do what I want to do without any concerns. That would be amazing.
Yeah, but do you think it really works that way always?
I don't know, but I'd like to try.
Like, I have friends now that are, started having kids much later. So they have kids at home still, or they have teenagers, and they're just like, your life is so great. And I'm like, yes, in some regards, but, I'm also on my own. And like, that sucks sometimes too. And just because I have the time doesn't always mean I'm going to use it resourcefully. So I think that's a common artist struggle. Not all of us, but a lot of us.
I don't know. It goes fits and spurts. Like I remember there was like 5 or 6 years where I was not productive at all. Like literally made no artwork whatsoever. And then there are times when I'm like in the studio every single day doing something. Like I don't care what, because it's just, I don't know, catharsis maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the thing about New York too, if you're paying for a studio in New York, like
you better be there.
Yeah, exactly. And I was sharing with other people, Amanda, on and off for years.
Okay.
She'll bust your ass if you don't show up. And as my daughter got a little bit older, there was more time. But then she was also a competitive ice dancer. So I was like driving all over creation and spending hours and hours at an ice rink, like doing needlepoint in the parking lot. So, there was stuff.
I'm sorry. I'm just totally picturing that from the lady that I met in the studios in San Francisco, who was like all punk rock, leather jacket and all that, to knitting outside of an ice dancing competition. Is that correct?
Practice, yeah. Because I didn't deal with the other mom, so I would just take my car.
But what? Wait, but I have to know, what kind of car was it? Like a minivan too, just to like paint the whole picture?
Oh no, it was an Audi Allroad.
Okay, that's pretty good. I'll go with that. Not very punk rock, the way I remember you, but still a nice car.
So they had a Range Rover in grad school.
I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
That's not very punk rock.
It's not at all. No.
No minivan. I love that Audi. That car was a piece of shit, and the suspension would always, air suspension would fall out, and yeah.
Has there been ebbs and flows in your exhibition opportunities and your sales and things like this, or has it been a very nice and consistent throughout the last 20 years?
No, it's definitely been up and down. I mean, it was pretty solid with Heather Marks. I think again, it was just timing. And so when they closed brick and mortar, it was really sad. But I mean, I understood why, because real estate in San Francisco was just crazy. And I think that was when art fairs were really starting to take off. And she does art advisory still. So if she can place me in a collection, she will. And then with Nancy in New York, I mean, it's this huge, beautiful gallery in Chelsea, and which is great. And she does the art fairs too. But yeah, I had my last big solo show was 2013, right before my daughter went to college. And I'm like, now what? And it's like, okay, that's fine, because there's other people there. I mean, she's been doing this for 45 years. And so she's had artists that, she has artists from like my age to younger to people in their 80s, like long careers. And sometimes when you look at the trajectory of someone who's had this career for 40 years, it's not all up here. Like there are dips, and people do try new things. And I guess there is, again, some freedom in that. If you have some downtime, you can do something different. And it's not so risky. It's like, oh, wow, she deviated from the program. Like, sales are down. So I don't know where it's going, though. I mean, I actually sold an encaustic piece a few months ago. It was something that I made a few years ago. And, she had a collector come in and they bought it. So I was like, okay, great. Sometimes it takes years to sell stuff. It's interesting.
It's very true. Like I've been finding in my career, I will be doing something and I'll work on it for like the same technique, concept, whatever subject, series for like 3 to 5 years. And then I'll put it out in the world and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited by this. And nobody gives a shit. And then about 3 to 5 years later, I come out with my next series, and then suddenly everybody's like, "Oh, but I like that last series. Can I buy that last series?" I'm like,
more other stuff.
Yeah, I really love the previous things you were doing. Like, fuck you. Like, keep up with it already.
Exactly, I know. Or people would always say to me, "Well, what are you going to do when your daughter grows up? What's your work going to be like?" And it was like, I don't know yet.
It's going to be empty.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, I think someone like, I don't know, then there's just like, well, do you make books? Do you put the time and effort into making books? Like that was very popular for a while then too. And I remember like Todd Heido, for example, who, I was good friends with for a long time. Well, books sell prints. Well, for him, they did. Like, his career definitely took off, and he made these beautiful, huge books, and that was that. So I did a little book with that Cavallo Point thing, but that's not in my skill set. Book design's not something I know how to do. And I think I was a little afraid too. It's like, well, do you invest in this route? Or again, I've heard you talk about, it's like, are residencies what sort of give you those connections again? Like, should we encourage people to do more residencies? Like,
well, my personal opinion, having heard 200 people's inputs on it, at this point I believe residencies are a very large part of the career building methodology now. Maybe it wasn't even 10 years ago, but today it's very much I believe a lot of it, you make a lot of connections, plus you get some extra things on your CV, plus of course you're also then given some time and space and resources to actually make invest time in researching and investigating a process or a technique or an idea that I think benefits people's careers in ways that when we didn't do them, we didn't have.
Right. I think originally the goal was to be on the wall in the gallery, and it was pretty sort of a narrow sight. And it was like, okay, I can focus on that. And I think you really have to be open to all kinds of different things now.
To wrap this up, I'd like to thank you for listening all the way to the end of the conversation. We would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, studio mates, or anybody with an interest in arts and creative endeavors. The building and strengthening of the arts and creative community is at the core of our mission for this podcast. They can listen and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are produced by 5014. The audio was edited by CushAudio Services, and the music was created by Pete Bybee. The Wise Fool Art Podcast is supported in part by an EEA grant from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway in an effort to work together for a green, competitive, and inclusive Europe. We would also like to thank our partners Hunt Kastner in Prague, Czech Republic, and Kunstsentrene i Norge in Norway. Links to EEA grants and our partner organizations are available in the show notes or on our website, wisefoolpod.com.